Hey, it's Nootsie, and today I have Brent Bruning back with me again for a repeat performance. He is a master hand analyst, and we just had a great time the last time I interviewed him. And out of all of the videos that I've done, over 150, people reached out to me the most after my interview with him with questions and comments and wanting to know about my experience. So I'm really excited to have Brent back with me. So welcome, Brent.
Uh, Thank you. I've actually had several people come and get a hand reading after watching that. And I just really thank you for giving me that audience. And you're just spectacular in the way that you ask these type of questions to bring this wisdom out to the people. Many people have been inspired by watching your podcast. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. This is really awesome sauce.
Well, before I forget, you've recently done something on Instagram that I was watching. It was a series, and people really need to check that out where you kind of give little blurbs about like what the Solomon ring is. And that I thought that was a genius way to introduce what you're doing. So that people need to find you on all your platforms, and I will list them below. But I just want to give like the quick Cliff Notes version of my time with you. I would have to say, out of all the people that I have talked to in my life, and there have been many, you are probably one of the most generous souls I've ever met. I mean, you really are just so kind and giving with your time. And I was really nervous to do my hand and analysis, and then I did the shift after that. But it was so uncanny how it seemed like you had to be a silent observer for my entire life because you just nailed me right on the head. And then, when we did the shift, it has made such a profound impact on my life. And so tell people a little bit about what you do before we get into the goodies.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen any of the previous podcasts, I'm a master hand analyst from the International Institute of Hand Analysis. I'm different than a palmist in that I'm using dermatoglyphic patterns, fingerprints, to see a universal pattern of how people live based on research that was done since the 1960s, like twins separated from birth that find out after 39 years they have a twin, and then they realize that they have a whole life story in common. They both drive the same Chevrolet, and they work in stock car racing, and they make toys in the back of their yard, just really odd things. And both their sons are named James Allen, and they divorce at the same time and remarry a woman named Betty. So that's biological, and that is explainable through different experiences that you're going through right now. You have a tolerance for anger, you have a tolerance or impatience of how long you can stay in certain experiences, whether it's making toys in your backyard or experiences of being in your profession or in transformation. Some people are married to a man that they don't have any tolerance for any transformational type of conversation. You have a lot of that. So when we're talking about experience, we're talking about the nervous system, and nowhere are you able to see the nervous system in its most beautiful map, most beautiful blueprint than within the hands. And that is because what we're talking about when we're really talking about a life story or a life pattern is that we're talking about what is the nature of consciousness itself. And your consciousness has a pattern. And what you're conscious of has a pattern. Certain experiences you're very conscious of, and certain experiences you block out. And the hand is a complete map of everything. And you can literally look at the hand and go, wow, you're super conscious in this area, not so conscious here. And that allows you to see the kind of life pattern or life story that someone is in. Why that is? Well, you just organize people by different hands, and you'll start to recognize people with similar hands have similar lives. And the more similar the hand is, just like you organize people like dogs, Great Danes over here, Chihuahuas over here, You have loving people over here. You have service-oriented people over here. You have people that just want peace, like, or in an adventure like Charlie Sheen, or people that are wise guys like Eminem, not in a love story, or people pleasing over here, or service-oriented or contribution. Those are all different fields of how you would organize the soul. And they all have aspects that they're dealing with in their life that are very predictable. And when you look at the pattern in the hands, they all have the same hands and their life purpose that they're saying, this is my life purpose. That you see as a fingerprint pattern is in the exact same area for all those people. And all the areas where they say, I don't know about, or I feel that's my shadow side, or I'm blocking out. I'm incapable. It's my greatest source of suffering, no matter what country or relationship I'm in. It's the same dumb thing, same problem. Fingerprint pattern, exactly. And so that's what I do is I show people that have been basing the study around my own book, and I published a book that isn't something for you to believe. It's actually here. You just look and it's there. It's nothing for you to just believe me just because I happen to say that you happen to have a talent. It's something for you to see. And that's what my goal is, to bring people to fall in love with their life again, fall in love with themselves again, and enjoy their life journey as a beautiful song. And how that's done is through the hands.
Well, and I think one of the things that it does is it makes you, or for me personally, it made me feel understood. Like you could see the drama and the trauma and the good and the bad and the ugly things that I had experienced in my hand. And I think everybody wants on, on a basic level is to be seen and heard and understood. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts of what you did. But one of the reasons why I wasn't going to do it is because for me, as a Bible Belt Christian, is the shadow sounds like, ooh, like, oh, like there's got to be something really naughty, nasty hiding in the shadow. So I wanted to, I was like, I don't know if I want to see that, but I want to read a quote from you about the shadow because I think it is just, it's beautiful. You said that knowing about the shadow is probably the biggest breakthrough that has ever happened in self-help and transformation. By knowing how much of your life is being written by a story that shows up in the nervous system and is represented in your hands and in your fingerprints. And when you took me through the shift and I was in my own shadow, you do it in such a way that my terminology would be, there was such a redemptive quality to the things that I had kept hidden or suppressed. So I want you to tell people in your terminology about the shadow.
Great. Yeah, great. And thank you for reminding me. That was an amazing experience, shifting you. And I remembered how the energy of the room just was like in this incredible energy of transformation. You really took me like a phoenix, rising through the ashes. So that's this process called the shift. And what we're doing there is I'm not bringing out any dark energy. There's no magic here. The shadow is the area of discomfort that has you feel separate from the whole. That's it. Simple. It's very simple. I'm going to make it really complicated, but the simple version of this is that whenever you're feeling separate or there's something active within you that makes you feel alone, separate, and detached, you bet what's happening at that moment is that there's an energy that's trying to assert itself in you that is saying, I got to be separate. And I'm not going to go anywhere until you fully listen to this energy. Now, there's a lot of regulatory emotions we have, like anger, like depression, like distrust, like not belonging, like guilt, like low self-worth, that put us right into the shadow anytime they're there. But what it ultimately is trying to help you see is that there's something missing in your life that needs to be added so that you can be whole again. Some people come into this lifetime with something missing already in their soul. Many spiritual people that I read hands for have really deep connections in their previous life, and they tell a very relevant story based on the interpretation I gave them. And they go, "You got this. You're absolutely right." And since then, I've been battling still, since a violent death in the previous life, that in this life, I feel that I am really sensitive to anger issues and all those things. And so any type of criticism throws me back into that really dark movie, and I feel separate. And in that place of separateness, they're not themselves. And everything positive that I would acknowledge in our 2-hour session in the hand analysis suddenly rises to your defense to protect you. You might be somebody who's very creative and dynamic, but when you're in the defense, you get crazy or fussy, angry as a person. So the shadow is an area that says, I am no longer part of the whole. And it's suppressing something that needs to come out somehow. And the pain of its arrival is a signal to you that it's time to listen. And with a compassionate voice of goodwill, you can get out of the shadow every time. With a compassionate voice of goodwill, you can get out of and break through anyone's shadow, if it's your wife, if it's your partner, if it's yourself, with the intention of goodwill, non-judgment, to that part that is asserting itself as this shadowy side. It will transform. And if I can show you and have you experience it for yourself, because everyone has a shadow side, and I can show you, and I can even bring it up for you. I can bring up your worst side. But when I can show you how that's a trigger of repression from the fingerprint, from a soul level that arrived at 9 weeks because your whole family for the last several generations has been dealing with a secret, could be, or another family dealing with money issues and irresponsibility, could be, or violence and anger and abuse within the family, then obviously something's going to get repressed there. And that shows up in the fingerprint pattern. And what gets unfortunately repressed also, let's say, just take, for example, self-worth. You know, if you repress something about your needs, and instead you say, I cannot stand up for my own needs. And instead, I'm going to give what I need, and I'm going to give you what you need out of a fear of rejection. If I stand up for my own needs, I might be rejected. So I'm going to give you what you need. Then I'm now in a codependent cycle of the shadow side. Right. And just in that particular example, there could be another formula like anger, right? I don't know how to talk about what I want and do what I want because I might make you angry. And if I come from a whole family history of people who have traditionally lost their temper, then it may be unsafe to say, Dad, I want this, right? And so as a result, if I say what I want, it may come as a criticism. It's better to just shut down. So what you do when you do that is you say, I'm afraid of anger because I'm tired of it. I've been hit with it from a family destiny. It's just so much. And so what happens is the things that would be beautiful in your life, like what you want, your desires that make you so beautiful, they get suppressed. And when that happens, you're dead in the water. And some people who are now separate from themselves of what they want in their life because they've been doing what everyone else wants, people pleasing,
Hmm.
They end up feeling that they don't, there's something missing in their life and they can't get meaning in the way that they once remembered. And as a result, they're kind of floating half dead, right? They're just kind of not quite here. They know they don't even know what they want anymore. What's their passion? So what's in the shadow is their passion.
Hmm.
So the passion, an empowering part of their life, is in the shadow and it's repressed. And so, are we talking about demons or anything negative here? No, we're talking about how to bring something that is an incredibly your right to have happiness in your life out in a compassionate way. And guess who's going to be waiting when I bring that to you and say, you know what? You kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater with this whole I want thing because you're so afraid of anger at the same time that as a result, you can't live a life that's empowered. And I don't know anyone who can live a life that's powerful if you're afraid of anger. So if you're going to annihilate anger as a emotion and say, that is the path of destruction, I will never, ever feel it again, guess what's going to happen? You take the same highway where your desires and what you want, they're thrown out in the same, and you create an electric fence saying, I don't go in that territory anymore. Now you're 60% a human being because God made you with that emotion. And if you're going to repress it or avoid it, then you're repressing a fundamental nature of your aliveness and your ability to set your own direction and your empowerment and your breakthrough ability to show up with your greatness, which is your divine right to have. So that's shadow work right there. And it's done in a very compassionate way.
You are very compassionate, and I'll just give a tangible example because what I think from the questions that I've received and my own trepidation going into it was like, okay, so like if I dig in the shadow, then what? Am I going to just be this angry, emotional wreck of a person, having temper tantrums because I don't allow myself to get angry. And so for me, one of the things that you pointed out is that I have a really hard time triggering a conflict, and I used to call it making stew. So I would just throw all of these emotions in a pot, and then when I finally had enough, the top of my head would blow off. But what you said to me, which you just nailed me right on the head, you said, when I'm in a relationship with someone, they end up realizing that I'm not ever gonna trigger a conflict. The next day, I'll just forget about it. And so when you pointed that out to me, you gave me the security to go ahead and start having conflicts with people and realizing that it's okay if they get mad at me. And so I think I sent you an email and I'm like, I am putting my big girl panties on and I am triggering conflicts at work and with my husband. And so it was really freeing to me. But one of the things that I didn't understand until I worked with you is when we do that, when we suppress that, we end up suppressing the good things. And it's really not that scary once you understand that this is a pattern. And if you can walk through that pattern, then you get to reclaim aspects of your personality. And so I'd love for you to talk about that part of it, because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, we're going to go into the shadow, but then what do I do? Like, what the hell do I do then?
Yeah, nobody wants to see their shadow side, right? Or they know it and they don't want me to see it. They don't want anyone else to see it, right? And they put on a really nice veneer and they go, well, I'm a nice person. But underneath it is a big dagger in the back if they're silently killing everyone off. God bless their heart. So the of course, when you first recognize the things that you might have feeling angry, the invitation isn't to create conflicts, it's to create engagements, more the story. But the idea is that you're wanting develop a new compassionate relationship to you. And if you have a difficulty with a core emotion like anger in this example, then you're going to be conflict avoidant. And that means that it's a life pattern of you being nice versus great and asserting the needs that you have. So this can show up in two particular fingerprint patterns. If you're listening, you can easily see this. You can see somebody who has a fingerprint pattern of a suppression in the area of their left index finger. So they're, maybe I got to show you an example, but yeah, I'll do that. I'll show you an example of somebody who has a compression. Let's see if I can dig it up real quick. Yeah, here you go. So I want you to look at, say, this fingerprint right there. All right. That's a happy-go-lucky fingerprint. It's a nice circle. All right. And you may have that on your left thumb, which means you are all about family, community, harmony. If it's on your left index finger, you're all about passion and empowerment. So you're not likely like you're going to have any problem around asserting yourself if you have a circle on your left index finger or your left thumb. But what would happen if instead you ended up getting a compression in that area, something goofy, right? What would happen if instead you got this type of wonky little S formation, or just an arch where there's just nothing going on compared to the other fingerprints? Then what that means is that from a family history point of view, there is a biological repression in the area of belonging, and if it's on the left index finger, standing up for yourself. So people's boundaries get violated all over the place when you look at their family history. So, and if it's an S formation, they're going to have even more volatility, right? So now, what happens is that the person is going to start telling a different story. You remember the twins separated from birth. They tell a different story. But when they come together, they find they have a similar story, that they both love making toys. Well, the story that people with these fingerprints are going to say is that I can't get along with anybody in my family. And I can't, and every time that I get into a conflict, all I'm reminded of is all the different difficulties. And so at a certain point, it's so painful that the pain, you shut down. Anything that is painful for more than 28 days, your body has to do something with, right? And so what it does is it shuts it down and it becomes unconscious. And when it does, it then goes into the background and you say, this is the way life is. Families, yeah. I'm not a family person. I can't manage conflict, right? And so what you did, and the moment you made that decision of that's the way life is you just sealed your fate for the rest of life. And people make these dumb decisions all the time in those times, and then they live out of that fate. So what happens then is they come to me and they made that decision 14 years ago. And I see that and I see, wow, this is a real painful story. And then I say, what's the story? What was the pain? What caused that? Because I can see from the fingerprint that you have a traditional need to push this thing aside and make it the background of your life rather than deal with it. So what happens? We have a conversation and they're like, ah, geez, yeah, you didn't know my father and my mother and my brother. Geez, yeah. And so then they get this whole story about this, and I go, great. Now it's no longer a shadow, is it? It's right here. It's conscious. Now it's no longer in the shadow. It's no longer in the woodwork. It's no longer saying this is the way life is. No, what's happening is this is what I'm feeling right now. And when you're feeling it, and it's quite conscious, and now you can do something about it. So those feelings that you had come back, and then you let them go. And in that place, an incredible transformation happens to the people who have been living in this shadow world that says life cannot work in this way any longer. They pop. And all of that stress, you bet it's inflammation. They become essentially that monkey is off their back. Mm-hmm. And they go into a place of seemingly nirvana. And how you get from looking so younger, so woman, I think she was in her 60s, and I didn't make her do more yoga. She's doing the same amount of yoga, same food, everything. But how to get from A to B is that she recognizes the upset and how detached she was from it, therefore in the shadow. And now it's back in her lap. And for 4 hours, we cry together about how difficult it was. And then we bring it out and let it go. Mm-hmm. And then you're left with a clean slate and go, okay, great. I mean, you can only cry at a funeral so long, right? You can only get it out. The emotion is out. It's meant to be temporary. And when it comes out all that way, and you can see how trauma works in a network. So you got all of the reasons why you suffer. Now it's out. Now you can be consciously in a new direction. And in your case, go have crucial conversations with people about what you want, knowing that you have suppressed a certain sense of unfairness or what you want, trying to do what everyone else wants. And now I say, don't be a jerk. That's not my invitation. I'm saying, go be great and really talk about. People really love it. Don't you love it when people are authentic with you and they say, no, I don't want it. Those are the people I call my friends. They tell me the truth, even if I don't want to hear it. I love them for it. Those are the people I trust more. And that's who you become, is somebody who's more authentic out of it. And this has made me a great or better father. I wouldn't say I'm not a great father, but it's definitely made me a better father, having been able to deal with my shadow side and saying, I've got it. And I'm not going to make myself wrong. It's okay that I've been angry at my kids, been angry, absolutely. But I'm not an angry person. And I know I'm not afraid of the fire anymore. Neither are they. They get the fire quite regularly, but they get the fire in a way of a compassion, going, no. So that area, if I don't like fire in general, I don't like the anger and everything and the suppressing it, and I'm just being nice, then you're going to get a overall life suppression in a particular way where you're going to deal with a lack of passion in your life. And as you can see, these people have made, in that particular area of the index finger, look how he is now. Right? Look how she is now. Right? This is breakthroughs.
Yeah.
So if I'm bringing out her shadow, did I do anything but talk about the elephant that was already in the living room? It's there, but it's in the background, and she's saying that's the way life is. No. And in this way, you can break through, and then key parts of yourself come out, and you become happy again because you live from a vision that's empowered where you get what you want. And that's your right to enjoy your life as a pleasure. And that doesn't come if you're suppressing and making it a demand that nobody gets to be angry around you or guilty or etc.
Well, I think the difference too between, it would, for me, it would have been virtually impossible for me to do something like this on my own because it was in the shadow. I didn't know it was there. And so I had to have you looking at my hands, looking at my family lineage, pointing out the patterns. So then I could realize it. And, to be perfectly honest, I was kind of bad at triggering these conversations in the beginning, but I went to my husband and I said, listen, like, this is what Brent told me. Like, I'm Julie on the Love Boat and I would rather fluff up than, have a conflict with you. And then when I finally get brave enough, the pot of stew boils over. So just bear with me. He was kind and compassionate because he knew I was trying to be better. And we are much more able to have a great conversation about conflict. And I wouldn't have been able to do that because it was in the shadow and I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Yeah, so what you're talking about there is super vital. Your husband got more of Nootsie
Yeah.
in that process. He got more feeling too, right?
Mhm.
More tango and more sense of, wow, she's here and I got more to deal with,
Mhm.
probably. And hopefully more of the pressure of suppressing or deep-seated issues around the relationship get out, and then there's nothing in the way. And when there's nothing in the way, you get more love and intimacy. But if you don't like anger, when you put it in the shadow and then you feel it, guess where you're going to be? Separate. And while you're separate, then something amazing starts to happen. Everything positive that I could possibly say about Nootsie starts to rise in her defense. And where we get this fluffer idea is the idea that she has an incredible soul. She has these areas in her soul that give her she has a tented arch, this kind of upside down T in her index finger. And when you look at anyone who has such a formation, may I show your hand
Sure.
analysis?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what you're seeing there is this. It's maybe a little tricky, but there's like it rises up right in the middle of this index finger, and it looks like a T, like if you were like an upside down T. I don't know if you see my cursor there. And I draw this in cute cartoon form of your fingerprint pattern here. And each part of your hand shows routes a different experience. So, we're really talking about the index finger as your area of what I want, my power. But you have a tenet arch there, which means you're kind of tentative in this area of self power. You want to learn more about it than actually express it. So that makes you tentative. And when you have as much of a loving soul as you do, you have 6 waves all over your fingerprints. That shows that somebody is a very loving soul. So you can organize people by fingerprints. You can see, oh, these are the loving tribe of humanity. Not everyone's in a love story. Some people are more contribution and they have different fingerprints. But chances are your listeners, because they love you, they definitely have waves all over their fingers. What's the shadow side of that is that if you're that emotional and you need that much love and closeness, you need that much more trust. And if you don't have trust, you're going to shut down. And when you shut down, that means you're bottling up your emotions, sweeping things under the carpet, saying that this emotion is not okay to express to you because I don't trust you. And one of the areas that you don't trust when you have a tenet arch in your left index finger, which is the area of I want, but I don't get it, and I'm going to give you what you want instead of out of a fear of any criticism, is I'm not going to talk about anger. And so as an outcome of that, I'm going to be conflict avoidant and I'm going to be slippery as a fish when it comes to when I don't like you and I don't want to be around you, you're just not going to hear from me. Busy, gone. Not saying, God, you just really you give me a headache with this thing, right? You just slippery as a fish. Bye. Where did she go? I thought we had something. Gone. So she can't say no, right? That's one of the things that can happen. He's like, well, if I say no, I might upset you because you might make me angry, and I don't want to make you angry. I don't want that story. I don't like anger. So as a result, I'll be nice and I'll be Julie on the Love Boat. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. It's like Julie was this really wonderful, always positive, always playful, always every episode ends perfectly in a great resolution. All right. So it's always like that, which is you can live on cloud nine like that, but it's not realistic to really what's going on. It's your assertion that that's the way it is. So as a result, you're in a bubble instead of living life authentically. And if you're in a bubble and somebody goes, well, you're just not being real, or your husband says, is there something bothering you? No, it's okay. It's fine. All right. And so when they're in that place, everything positive that I could say about this, let's talk you up if I may. The
Please.
positive aspects of, if you want to understand why you like Nootsie so much, is that if you notice this hand, it looks like it's on fire with all these lines, right? They're crazy all over the place. That is a woman of transformation. Byron Katie has very similar hands too, if you happen to know her style. It's a fiery woman. And so what the nervous system is doing is it's going all over the place saying, I need the full Monty of all experiences. I am dynamic and I am energetic. I'm an energetic person, positive, transformative. So looking deeper, we see that this has a very strong index finger that's just popping out right here. It's almost going above the halfway point. So this is an idealistic woman. And a pinky that goes above this threshold. She's super clever too. So we have the workshop leader there, just in that combination. Big index finger ideals and a really good networker, clever, always connecting many ideas together, taking a hand reader like Brent Bruning and seeing what does this have to do with prayer? And how does that have anything to do with God's work, right? So you're able to see all the connections there. And then she has a super, super clear headline, great business sense. So we expect good business deals out of such a hand. And a flat thumb, which means that she's giving her life to the divine. Pretty good stuff. So, and a strong intuition too. Strong intuition. So when that comes together, she's a constant creative force, lots of creative outlet. She's constantly expressive energy. However, her fingerprints, if you go into those, they show a wrestling, a struggle. Instead of having a circle on her right index finger, which is being the visionary leader, she has a circle, or she has a tenet arch in her left index finger saying, I'm going to struggle with personal power. And she's saying what I want. So hopefully I'll make it my life journey to take as many classes as I can around that. And in the area of family and building and ownership, I'm going to experience some swings there, maybe even a separation, S, yin and yang energy. So the shadow comes when it comes time to confront something that is really difficult for her, that she has to talk about the elephant in the living room, that she needs to say no, and she knows that that's going to be hurtful for the person. They know that they have these great expectations and they're flying away with Nootsie. And she says, listen, I have to stop you here. And this isn't working for me anymore. And I need to make a break here. I need to do something better for me right now. And This is becoming too much. I've given you a service, but yes, feel like my service is now turned into a friendship, which is now turned into an all-you-can-eat buffet of Nootsie time. I have a husband and a life. I have to tell you no now. When that happens, what does Nootsie going to do? That's when the shadow comes, because she's going to feel a sense of separation at that point. Instead of unity in the God and holy force of being all in one, she's going to say, if I say no, I'm going to be separate. At the moment that happens, you're in the shadow. And in the shadow, how does Nootsie become Julie on the Love Boat? Well, this is transformative. She's going to be in a constant high energy, and she's got 1,000 things to just divert her attention to. And because she's in a constant transformative work, she's going to go, we can work on this and be positive about this. And we're going to be super clever. And we're going to go into a place of idealism. It's actually a pretty positive shadow when I think about it. But in the end, I mean, some people have some pretty dark shadows, like I become Donald Trump and I, become Godzilla kicking down trains and throwing cars, right? But this one is that your shadow side becomes a hiding place. The ego that you have of everything that positive, you become obsessive and you become inauthentic sometimes. You can become an area where you go deep within your head and then you just disappear and you go into your cleverness and your ideas and you just disappear in that world. Nobody knows what happened. It's just that you're not there anymore responding to messages, for example. Mm-hmm. So that is all because of the protection, because everyone has it, right? I mean, the ego is there to have one goal, which is to protect you and get your needs met. So everything positive, I would say, goes into a negative and become even calculated. That can happen. And you become restless and you go, I need to get out of here. And I move to another country, move to another place. And some people stay there their whole lifetime. Mm-hmm. They don't get out. And if we can get a percentage of how much you're in the shadow versus being this transformative person and a force of happiness and love and joy and bringing wisdom to people, if we can get a percentage that you're in this idealistic bubble and you're not able to say no to anybody, because if you do, you're gonna upset the apple cart too much, and therefore you're going to be in a relationship that you lose feelings, could happen. Then you're being nice. And then what happens is that you live yourself in a separation. And so when somebody has a shift, we go into this story again, and then you look at all the times that you had to be in that place. And it's just like, if I leave the bathroom with the light on for 28 days straight, or your husband leaves the toilet seat up 28 days straight, after a while, it becomes habit forming, right? And so you just don't know any other way to live. But if I can then show you how much you've been in this separate place, and guaranteed, if you're suffering and you would say your life is not, out of a scale of 1 to 10, all your relationships, your mother, your father, everything, if it's not a 10 out of 10, you're in the shadow about something. And if you're saying your life quality and the meaning and fulfillment isn't there anymore, your passion isn't there, you're in the shadow, then if we can get a percentage to that, and I can say, put all these into imagery and see it for yourself, then it's no longer in the shadow. And if you have, even if it's 28 days of leaving the light on, or 15 years, if you show me how much you've left the light on in the bathroom for a lifetime, and you spent 4 hours creating a shadow board of that, which is what you did, and you broke through that, then the next time you leave the bathroom, guess what you're going to see? You're going to see everything about it. And that's what happens, is that people then become compassionate. You have to deal with the emotions. And now when it's time to say, all right, now the part of me wants to disappear again, but I have a crucial conversation, I'm going to now speak.
Well, and
And that's
I think the thought of dealing with the emotion is so much more scary than actually dealing with the emotion. And one of the things that I learned from you, I knew on a level, but the way that you articulated it is like when we're doing these repetitive behaviors, and it's like you said on one of your videos, Groundhog Day, you can bet that you're in the shadow. And so I have just put that in the recesses of my mind, like, okay, when have I felt like this before? Like, because it's the punishment that I'm giving myself doesn't fit the crime. So it has to come from someplace else. So when else have I felt like that? And I can look back then on our conversation and the patterns that I have and realize that in this specific area, whatever it happens to be, I'm in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And I can't get there from there. So maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So the shadow, when it's happening, means that there's an emotion that's hijacking you, right? Something's hijacking the story. I mean, you want to have a fulfilling life and you want to be happy, go lucky, but you're in distrust and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So it seems like it's like having a cold, you know? I'd love to feel great, but I got a cold. I can't do anything about it. So the experience when you're in it has you feel like a victim. And when you're in a victim story, you're going to see that everyone seems to have power over this story, or the circumstances seem to be greater, or the problems that you have that represent this feeling seem to be greater than you.
Hmm.
And you are now in a place of repetitive stress disorder. And it's repeating because every time you look up, it's there, but you can't deal with it. So you look down, you look up, it's there, you can't deal with it. You're in repetition. And that area starts to create other people as perpetrators, right? So every time when I'm looking at somebody with a fingerprint that's compressed, and this is not your example, but if you had waves, for example, on all your fingers, which you don't, but if you did, and there was just one compression here and the left index finger, I'm going to, in the hand reading, I'm going to listen for 2 hours how they have the narcissist in their life. And they married the narcissist, and then they got another narcissist. Who created the narcissist? The fingerprint was developed at 7 weeks as a fetus, right? So this process of creating a perpetrator in your life,
Yeah.
you creating a perpetrator in your life while you're feeling like the victim, while looking for a rescuer, and that could be alcohol, it could be just your partner or somebody else to get another country. Whatever the case, there's a triad there, and they have recognized. If you go look at this triad online, you'll see it's several decades in psychotherapy and trauma therapy, that a trauma exists in a triad. That there's always a perpetrator, there's always a victim, and there's always a rescuer. And let's say that you have a guilty conscience. Well, you might be more the rescuer here, right? And that you are stuck in that one. But either way, you're stuck somewhere, one of those three in the triangle. You might be stuck being a perpetrator, right? I know a couple people that are probably listening right now that know themselves as being quite rough on the people in their life. And because of whatever hurt that they've felt or betrayal that has happened, they're now putting everyone else in their life on trial, or their partner. So perpetrator, right? Or victim.
Yeah.
Let's go to the rescuer. The rescuer, just yesterday, I was dealing with a gentleman who has the fingerprint pattern of guilt which creates inevitably a codependent cycle. What that means is that I can't get what I need. I have to do what someone else's need out of a state of obligation because that's the honorable thing to do.
Mm.
And I come from a family where that's the honorable. It's called self-sacrifice. You might want to be there for your friends, but the family needs you here. So we got chores to do. And that's a guilty, strict, strict, almost like nun way of working at the convent, right? It's just a lot of that guilty conscience type way. And that over time, that gets into the bloodstream, into the fingerprints, and you end up getting a compression in the right middle or left middle. Now, what happens if you're born with that guilty conscience? It means that you might have be a really good soul, a good mentor, and you never really want to be somebody who's going to be a big ego. So you're going to be a little bit wrestling with self-worth, right? Now, what happens? Son, they get in a marriage and they're constantly obligated to work. And then they're obligated to the family, and nobody seems to be happy in any direction. And then their son gets something really bad, cerebral palsy, right? Now, oh my God, now how could you ever possibly live a life of doing what you love? Because it's the right thing to do, to be there thick and thin because of that. But you had that fingerprint pattern and you're putting it on your son. You're creating your son and you're creating you as the rescuer for that. Does that mean that you don't be responsible and care for your son? No, but everyone has a right to get out of this pattern to live a life that's fulfilling. But when you're in that pattern, there is nothing but repetition and you can die that way. And many people, yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, and you point this out really beautifully about how, if we're born with that pattern and that is the filter that we see life through, it becomes a distortion where I might think that people don't take me seriously. And everybody I come in contact with, I feel like, well, they're not taking me seriously. Where if you talk to the people I was dealing with, they don't see that at all. And so I think that, is so enlightening and freeing when you point that out. Like, people take me, it's not really my issue, but people take me seriously. But if I think that they don't take me seriously, then every person I come in contact with, I don't think they're taking me seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is the 10 arches in the fingerprint pattern. And that is if you're afraid of that, if you've got that as the key core belief, it's a limiting belief pattern. And the limiting belief is what you're seeing in the fingerprint, if you want another language to put there. The limiting beliefs are biological, and that is seen in that pattern. And that creates you continually avoiding certain experiences. And you might not ever go into a profession of life transformation coaching if you believe that you can't be taken seriously. I certainly had to deal with that one, being a hand reader. Are you kidding me? I was in 20 years of software robotics, and my parents would suddenly see me make a transition and going, oh, Jesus, he's a palmist now? Are you kidding me? Yeah, right? And he's got a family. How is he going to do this, right? And I'm like, no, I'm a hand analyst, right? But I had to deal with that as well. And the way that I dealt with it is I just felt it, and I had to deal with all the tomatoes and rejection to go through that process. Otherwise, I didn't take me seriously.
Right.
Even when it came out, it was like I had this kind of smirk, and everyone would say, Brent Bruning, you have the smirk. You can't, everything that comes, you just always amused by what you're saying, and it's not meant to be taken seriously. I don't have the smirk anymore. I haven't had it for years. But when I first got in, everything had the smirk, and that was putting me into a constant discredit or living in self-doubt about that which I knew was right and I was very passionate about.
Yeah, because the community that I came out of, and I was talking to a friend of mine about this yesterday, and she was saying, well, this specific person says, like, if I meditate and I see these things in my life, I'll create these things. Well, not if you're in a self-prescribed prison. If you are not addressing your shadow and you're not addressing those patterns, or limiting beliefs is probably the more modern vernacular for a lot of people. If you're not addressing those limiting beliefs and taking action, there's no amount of meditation that is going to break you free. And I think that's what you do in the shift. You say, you made me look at myself in the mirror and take a good inventory in a very compassionate way, to where, okay, like, do I want to be nice or do I want to be great?
What you're really saying is exposure therapy, right? So you end up in the shift. It's not enough that you create this big shadow board, right? So if you don't know what the shadow board is, I'll show you mine so that you can imagine. And God bless if my mom is who is maybe in the room today. She's in my shadow board. And I showed her my shadow board, by the way, just as a little side story, right shortly before she passed on. Thank God I did, because it ended up creating an incredible relationship with us. Now, in the shadow, there's my shadow board, right? It looks like something a psycho would do, right? Like, what the heck is going on here? So what this is that I'm looking at the irresponsibility that seems to have been haunting me, and the neglect that seems to be haunting, and the fears that were haunting me that were just coming through, and the different wrestling. And I had a core belief that you could see in the fingerprint, that anyone with my fingerprint pattern says I'm neglected, bullied, with negative self-worth. That would be what a typical combination of my fingerprint. And this is what it looks like. This is all the years of what it looks like. Now, once this is out and the cat's out of the bag, it's like an alcoholic who's finally going, wow, these are all the drinks that I actually drank. And now you're seeing it and you're like, oh, geez. And if I'm then this way 70% of the time, then it's reasonable that I'm going to be there 70% more. Oh, great. I mean, if this is my life, I might as well just kill myself. That's no way to live, right? But what happens is that I have to face this if I'm going to live. I have to. So I did. And when I did, something very beautiful happened. I shared with my mom and I said, look, I got this from age 5. I got a lot of these experiences coming up, and I felt we were always wrestling with money, and we were always talking about, I had 2 older brothers. I was picked on and bullied there. And I just felt like there was not a safe place. And, while she was in Hawaii, she was just like, oh, God, I'm a terrible mother. A terrible mother. Bad mom, bad mom. And I said, no, you're not a bad mother. That's not the message here. The message is, this is what I feel I have wrestled with. And yes, you are part of this story, guaranteed. But I am not in any way holding you to account. I'm taking responsibility for this. And this is what's in the way when I became a father. This is all these things that are now repeating themselves again. And if I don't deal with this, I'm going to end up separate in my marriage as a solution. So how I have to deal with this is I have to grow up. I have to. And one of the ways I'm going to grow up, Mom, is that I love you. And I'm taking this from you. Because you have carried this, and we did a great job to make sure that you were the perpetrator and we were the victim. And you're the reason why we have this Protestant work ethic, and we look twice at the menu on the left side all the time. But while she was in Hawaii, I said, with this, you know now how I have suffered. I guess you know. And you know how I lost my temper. Well, it's cat's out of the bag. Now that guy who has lost his temper and did all this. And I take full responsibility. You are now relieved. And when that happens, something really fundamental in our relationship broke. The wall that we always had, pretending that this wasn't around. I always judged her for her difficulty all the time. And for the first time, once this was out, I didn't have anything else I could say other than I love you. And in that place, something miraculous happened. Well, at first, she was really taken by this. She cried. I'm upstairs, and my wife is coming to me going, great, now it's just her second day here, and she's upstairs crying. And I was like, let her go through this. But when she came down, and she started also talking with my wife, and I mean, she came and she was so beautiful, radiant. And she walked down like this angel of a woman. I'm not kidding you. It was so beautiful to see. And for the next week, this was no longer anywhere in our picture. She was nothing but love. And out of that, I got a whole new relationship as a father and a new relationship with my mom. And if I hadn't had that conversation, I would have never had the level of language when I said, I love you. It would have never really landed fully because it would always been this, but this, right? And so what happened then is that we created a vision together, of course, of that week, what we wanted. I want my chocolate chip cookies, and you're going to make spaghetti, and you're going to do all these things. I want all the food that I've been neglected living in Switzerland. I want it all. And as well, I want to go to all these places. So we created that vision. And that's what we do in the vision exercise. After you do the shift, you're done. Now, go create. In that case, I created my vision of being in Hawaii from shifting myself. And all these things that happened for me really did happen. Created a program of well-being and health and how to engage in nonviolent communication for people. And then out of that vision, I'm not interested in stacks of cash on a table or any law of attraction stuff. I'm here to show you that you're now in a new chapter. Now go for it. Now go do it. Now, of course, you're going to have some of the same old experiences of, oh, well, I'm going to have to say no again. I'm going to have crucial conversations. I'm going to have to engage. Great. So here, this is where Nootsie, what you said is so powerful just about 7 minutes ago, which is now the work of real transformation happens in the experience of expressing this positively, consciously. Go to Tuscany, go to Hawaii, compose music again, get yourself in shape, go find your spirit and find peace within, and everything else will fall in place. Learn the art of negotiation, take the classes. That's a creative life, but I don't know a life that isn't creative. So what happens is the inspiration of the divine comes through you and you're inspired to create a whole new chapter in your life. And in that place, something really beautiful. You show up, and that's why you're seeing those pictures of the before and after. And it doesn't matter whether you haven't been doing anything you want for 25, 30 years. Most people have gotten in the habit of neglecting what they want to do. But this guy, Carnegie Hall flutist, making pretty amazing transformations just in days, right? So he's got a vision on the right, one on the left, not so much. and he's living that vision. He's writing his book. He's inviting people. He's buying his favorite red wine. He's getting people out into and organizing his dormitory where he's managing. All these things happening. It's through the action employed that creates the life of transformation. Finally, everything up to this is just a stint that we're creating a cast around you. Now go walk the walk.
Yeah, because the emotions follow the action, and that's what's really powerful about, looking at it as anything that we repeat, is in the shadow. And then we produce those chemicals of stress and we can't see a way out. And so by you helping me create this vision board, or, helping me see where my niche is, and putting that down on paper, then I could start walking towards it. I may not know the steps, but I point myself in that direction, and then the steps manifest. But if I just am sitting, in my stenchy water doing the same thing that I've always done every day, you're never going to get there from there. And that's what's so beautiful about what you're doing for people, because people who come to me are wanting transformation, but sometimes it's such a big thing. Like, okay, I've been a dental assistant my entire life, a friend of mine, and she just quit. She has no idea what she is suited for. Like, that is a big thing. And so I think what you're doing is just really valuable, because I'm not going to be a concert violinist or pianist. I'm suited to, working from a divine level and networking and having, seminars. And so I think, you don't see it as easily as me looking in, probably, because, what do people want in their life? Hell, most of the time people don't even know what they want in their life. Don't even know what they're good at, because they have been suppressing their creativity, and half of their puzzle pieces have been in the shadow. And so I really hope that people will reach out, because I'm a raving fan, and you can tell by the passion in which I speak, the shift really did shift me.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. And what happened afterwards? Maybe say a little bit after you shifted. Then what was the inspirational actions that occurred to you, and what did you start appreciating with gratitude even more? You like the birds, right? And just explain who you became, and how life started to occur differently. Maybe you can say a little bit about that.
Well, I think the biggest shift was with how I was looking at my husband. He is he's my guy, and I love him so much. And, we have a great relationship, but because I was not being authentic with him, and I wasn't talking about things that made me upset until I got really upset. He's really tender. And then when I would get really upset because he's tender, it would really hurt him. And then we would have this big wall between us. And so I systematically, by talking to him, I could cry. I do cry, because I pulled the bricks down that I put up. And, it made us even closer than we were when we were just so fiery, passionate, in love in the beginning, because we weathered some things, and he's getting the real me. And so that means the most to me, to have, the closeness with him. But then, one of the other things that you told me is, you told me the story about you being the icebreaker, and that, that's what I needed to do. And I started to invite people to be guests on my YouTube channel, and it has been the joy of my life. It has just, it's given me a newer passion for it, to, highlight other people, which is what I love. And, those are just two things that are really, really, really huge for me, to go ahead and be seen, and go ahead and say what I want, and do it in a kind way, and get my own needs met, with as well as protecting other people. And I didn't have the freedom to do that before, because it's really all about building bridges between us and other people and being in communion with one another. And that is just a gift that I will always be thankful for that you have given me.
I took a before picture and after picture of you. You're
Ah,
radiant, right? But you want to see you in the shadow?
yeah.
It's really funny, but it's good to see, right? But it's once you see it, you can't not see it. So that's you in the shadow, right?
Like,
Now, just
it's like I'm looking like, take me seriously. I am saying good stuff here.
right, yeah. Now imagine you're married to this person, right? Now, just recall back 30 minutes what I was saying about the shadow side, right? So if you can't deal with anger, then and you can't say no, then you're gonna be kind of spaced out in a bubble, Julie on the Love Boat, drifting around, right? And so if you're afraid of confrontation, you even see it. That maybe how you will even language that if you just looked at that person cold is like something's gone wrong here, right? But that was your mode. That was your way of that's how you said things with the vernacular of the most enthusiasm that you could. But just look at who you are today. And this was your testimonial afterwards. I mean, just look at how radiant she is, right? Just
And
compare.
softer. I'm so much softer. Like that's what it's done for me. Even my fascia and my tissue and my skin is softer.
Yeah, look at the energy here, right? Now, but she compared that with that, and you got some and or just who you are today, right? And you're shining, right? And the person who's shining can talk about the elephant in the living room. So did I do any magic or any difficulty? Did I bring out dark things? Yes, I did. We got into some harder topics, but by going into those things and saying it's okay with a level of goodwill and compassion, and saying, hey, people get a right to be forgiven. And through that, you end up having a beautiful vision board of your life where you can do these type of podcasts that we knew was more fulfilling for you anyway. And now you're even becoming quite a leader in these podcasts. And I think you're just in your element, and that's what happens. People, when you see the hand, you can limit a little bit the array of choices for them. If I say, well, you are really good at podcasts, maybe you do podcasts, right? So there's a soul path of what you're here to learn in this lifetime. In other words, what you're suppressing right now that you need to open up, and as well as this exalted life that you're going to live if you do. And that you then fall in love with yourself. And so do people fall in love with you even more. But if you're detached, like that first photo, you're in the shadow side, you might be there for your whole lifetime. And then funny things happen to your immune system when that starts to shut down after some time.
Well, and that you do it. Yes, there, you have a tremendous amount of compassion. You're just a really kind person, but you have so much generosity with your time. And I never felt rushed, or I never felt, like I was an imposition. Your ability to listen and translate what I'm saying and point out the patterns is really uncanny. But people can watch our other interview, but maybe just tell people kind of what the process is. And I'm going to list everything below. And then you've also are going to give the people who reach out through this video, you're going to give them a discount. But I would love for people to know exactly kind of the process.
I am a hand analyst. So therefore, the first step would be that you're going to send photos of your hands facing the sun, and you send up the full hand, and then you do some kind of a close up like that, and your thumbs. And when you send them to me, I will prepare a diagram that you saw. It's a little improved since then, but in that we're going to talk about the nature of your soul, what you came on earth to do, your life purpose, the the operating system of how you think and how you feel and what your spirit is like, how you are emotionally in a relationship, and these are non-negotiable needs. And then we're going to create that and see how that combines when you have a soul path with these, this kind of passionate side, or with some talents that we can see from the lengths of the fingers and some other star formations and lines. We can see, wow, you have a special gift. Everyone has one. And there's an area that you are in your element doing something that with a longer, let's say, a longevity that other people don't. And so I want you to know what your gift is. And then what's the shadow side? What is the area that you're going to neglect, or the area that you're going to feel avoid, that your soul doesn't want to go into because it feels a sense of fear there? And I'm going to show that to you. There's a statement or the limiting belief that you have. And then I'm going to show you exactly how to break through that. This will be already a very enlightening conversation that will bring you hopefully a mind-blowing experience that your hands show more than you are aware of in terms of your life pattern. So we have a coupon code, Nootsie, and I set it up for $60 off. It's actually my most generous offer I can give you because you've been giving me so much time. So apply Nootsie as a promo code to my website, thepowerinyourhands.com. Book a 2-hour session. Send your photos, and then we'll talk about that. It'll be recorded, and you'll also get an extra 5-minute recording you can share with your people, because chances are you're going to want other people to get their hands read too, and they don't want to listen to a 2-hour recording. So they may want to know a 5-minute version, which is a great way for your mom and your friends to know who you are and what you've gone through. So that is the outcome. Step 1. Step 2 is that if you recognize yourself in the shadow area and that statement, and I happen to hit a nerve there, and you see that you might be there a percentage of time, if it's more than 30%, then you know that might be something that has a cost or an impact in your life. That means, imagine 1/3 of next year, you're in the shadow side. What would it be worth you to shift that? So for some people, that's worth a lot, right? And that's the shift process. And the process is, when you sign up, you can use the same Nootsie code, and you can go in, and what I do is I'm going to send you a shadow template, and you're going to give me the whole story of what it is. I'll explain technically more in our session when you want, but you create a shadow board. You give me 20 images of as if you're a movie producer and I'm the director, and I'm like, okay, so this is the story of how it goes, right? And this is who you become, right? You become Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, or you become a Godzilla, whatever it is. Who do you become when you're in this place? And at that point, you bring it to our session, and then over the course of the 4 hours, we are able to go to the seat of the emotion and then to the seat of the soul, and have you stand there, and something beautiful happens every time. The room shifts. It's an amazing process as you go. If I can stand here, I can stand anywhere. But this is the hardest place for me to stand on earth. And then you're going to realize you haven't really been on earth very much if you can't be here. So once you're here, then you're going to have an opening. This opening is a soul opening. Your soul's out. And then for the next 48 hours, you create a vision board. And you come and give me the vision board. And in the vision board, I want some SMART goals. I'm going to be a better, more loving person. That's not going to work. I want activities like, I am going to have a crucial conversation with my husband about things that don't work, and we're going to have 2 date nights a month. Okay, we're good. That's good. I like that. Let's add that one. And on and on. What you're going to do for your well-being and your career, even if you don't know what you want, those images start to flood in at that stage. And then you come up with a plan, and I say, great, I'm excited about you, and let's go, let's see what you can do, right? And you go and do it. Now, for me and for most people, they're shifting into a whole new life, right? They've been living another life or unemployed or like an Olympian. And he's like, yeah, but I got this vision of me being in a marriage and I moving to a job where I have no skills. I've been running around the track for all these years and I got dropped by Nike. Now what? I have this vision board and then I said, okay, great. So if you're not going to go do that thing, you need help to understand how to do it. That's the hero's journey. And that is available for anyone who wants to figure out how to do it. How do I love my partner after 14 years of not, right? How do I go into being somebody who is now Switzerland's top brand manager for the sports company, who was previously an unemployed Olympian, and now he's a father of two? How did he do that? Well, that's how the hero's journey works. And it's based on Joseph Campbell's work that you have to get out of your ordinary circumstances and through here I'm using about 20 years of transformational work on a business level to take these skills that I've been using for the banks in Switzerland who have given me several $1,000,000 to work with. And now I'm taking your two and a half thousand and I'm saying, I'm going to use the same thing. And I'm saying, go do that and go build up your business. I know you don't have a template in your life, but I can guarantee you I can get you up and running in your business or your dreams if you just follow the plan. And there we work on really physical transformation, spiritual transformation, and you go in and reclaim your life. So you recreate it, and usually about 200 people are impacted in that process, 200 people. So it's a lot different than just walking away with a vision board and saying, okay, go do it. Here, I'm giving you, okay, you got wings to fly, but go fly here first, then fly here second. And then, so it's over the course of 28 days. So they get people to really jump the nest, to really live the life that they're living in a very powerful way. So that's a 28-day process. And a lot of people go through that process with me. In fact, most people, if you've probably figured out, they're not coming to get their hand read. They're coming because they saw somebody in their life who went through one of either the shift or the shift in hero's journey, and they were like, I want that. Mm-hmm. So nobody really cares about their hand. They care about the problem that they've had over their lifetime about, I can't live from my passion, or I can't seem to get in a relationship that feels good, and that's worth something for them. And we're talking about life transformation. We're not talking about psychology. You're not going to find your life purpose in a Myers-Briggs test. Mm-hmm. We're talking about really trying to move into the life you love so that it's a pleasure for you and the people around you.
Yeah, it really does change your existence, not your personality, not your, purpose. It changes your existence, which it's a beautiful gift. And you really are one of my favorite people. I know I gush over you all the time, but I can't help it. I just always want to hug you because, it just has been a wonderful thing that I've done for myself. So I'm so happy that you came back and let me
Thank you for the generosity of bringing me onto your podcast to talk about this really traditionally taboo topic.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's a shame that it's so taboo. But
you're redeeming it.
I hope so. I don't know anyone else who's doing the shadow work like this, especially with the hands. And so I'm considered a little bit of a unicorn out here in this world. So it's nice to have the endorsement of what I'm doing.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully we can do it again sometime soon. So
absolutely love to be on and answer any questions.
Okay. Maybe we'll do a question and answer next time. So thanks, Brent.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Bye.
Bye. All right.